So thank you for joining us today. To our viewers, we are here to speak on the topic of preparing for Congress, both from the affiliates perspective and then the delegates perspective of serving at Congress. Our upcoming Congress, as you all know, I trust, is in Orlando, Florida in the USA, with NFBPW-CA USA as our hosts. And that's the 21st to the 25th of August this year. So we're in the lead up to Congress now. The purpose of this panel is to help our affiliates know how best to prepare and our delegates how best to serve once they're at the Congress. So let me begin by introducing our panelists. First of all, we have Dr. Yasmin Darwich, who is our immediate past international president. Secondly, we have Elizabeth Benham, who is a past international president. Next, we have Vicky, who is the current resolutions chair for this Congress and a past BPW New Zealand president. And we have Linda Davis, who is the current BPW Canada president and the past resolutions chair for Cairo 2017. I'm Dr. Anne Hilty, and I am the past Congress organizer for Jeju 2014 and the founding president of BPW Hong Kong, and I'll be our moderator for this session. So let's get started. Our first question today is, how best can affiliates prepare for Congress? And first, we'd like to hear from Linda on this topic.
Thanks, Anne. The kinds of things that we would expect delegates to prepare ahead of time would be obviously to register and make sure that the dues are paid from their federation or affiliate, to make sure that they have read the resolutions that are coming through in bylaw packages and discussed with their other delegates for voting purposes how they will respond to those, and of course any questions and things that they may have. To look at the book of reports that will be sent out ahead of time, and to ensure that if they have any questions about reports to any of the executive, that they've got those questions noted and ready to go at the Congress. So read all the materials that have been sent out and make sure that they understand what's expected of them prior to going to Congress. And to be ready to present, if that's their role, ready to initiate resolutions and any kind of bylaw requests. Okay. I think that's it from my perspective. Maybe someone else would like to add to that.
Thanks, Linda. We'd like to hear from Vicky on this as well.
Okay, so my thinking about this is partly from the position of being a federation. It's not only what we can bring in, but what do we hope to achieve out of a Congress? And so one of the things we try and do in New Zealand is make sure that everyone who comes, delegates and observers, has a role. So whether they step up and are at credentials desk, whether they're researching to help delegates, whether they're given some role of networking to find out about what other countries are doing, whatever it is, we just try and have some objectives. The other thing we do is try and connect everyone who's going on a WhatsApp app, so that even before they go, they understand what we're trying to achieve, and when we're there, everyone's connected and knows if someone's speaking, or at a workshop and one of our members is speaking, so others go support. So it's doing a lot of that preparation, just so you feel like a team, because that makes a huge difference. Being at such a wonderful event, everyone gets energized, but if you come back as a team, it actually helps the federation afterwards. So that's something I'd say is really important. I'm just trying to think of other things. I think I'll leave it there, because the role of the delegate is a separate question, I know. Yeah.
Okay. Vicky, could you just say another word or two about, as the federation, or if there isn't a federation, the clubs get together and review and prepare for how they're going to vote, how their delegates will vote on their behalf. So about the review process of what will eventually be presented at Congress.
Okay, so in New Zealand we have an AGM each year, and so we always know beforehand things like what, particularly any internal resolutions or anything that will affect the operation. So at our AGM, that would be where we would elect our delegates, so they're elected, and we also may bring up for general discussion any key points, but certainly within our executive leading up to conference, we would discuss things like some of the resolutions, some of the amendments, and also nominations, and come up with a federation position, and we would decide some of them are, you know, that's what it is, whereas others we would be guided listening on the floor to see if what our position was. So we sort of go through everything and decide whether it's a firm position or it's open to see where things are at.
Great, thanks. And I'm sure BPW Canada is doing a similar process. All right, so that leads us to our second question, which is, what is the purpose of the regional and international board pre-Congress meetings? Those happen before the General Assembly begins. And we'll start with Liz on this one.
Okay, thanks, Anne. So the Congress is held every 3 years, we know that. And the regional meetings are dictated by our governance that the region has at least one conference during the 3 years between our General Assemblies or our Congresses. And it also dictates that we can't have a regional meeting at least 8 or 9 months prior to a Congress. So in actuality, there is no regional meetings in the year that the Congress takes place. So to accommodate everybody getting together as a region, and you know, BPW International manages our organization through the 5 regions that we have. It's a big, big world. And so the regions really are very important in how we communicate vertically, horizontally, between our affiliates, up and down from the organization's executive down to the lower affiliates. And so the regional coordinator who is elected for that position plays a key role. So the regions do serve a huge purpose in making sure that the communications and all of those things that make the organization tick are accomplished. So prior to the General Assembly, before the General Assembly begins at the Congress, there is 5 regional meetings. Each region has its own meeting. And at those meetings, a lot of things take place. First of all, it would be the regional coordinator's last meeting before she finishes her term, or she may be running for a second term. So she will obviously be moderating that meeting. And there we have presentations of some of the issues that's been going on. Affiliates may have had meetings going on. The regional coordinator has probably traveled and has updates to give. But there's also some business that is required for the General Assembly. Each region has to choose a person who will serve on the nominating committee at the Congress or at the General Assembly. The nominating committee's role is, of course, to be balanced, but to review all of the nominations to make sure that they are in fact in order and that they meet all the criteria and requirements that the General Assembly requires before voting takes place. Now, what's particularly important about that is if for some reason there has been no candidate submitted for a position, then candidates will be called for from the floor. And the nominating committee, of course, has to take charge of that and take charge to make sure that if there is a candidate from the floor, then all of the documentation has to follow the same criteria and requirements that all the other documentations and other nominees have had to put in prior to it being distributed through the international organization and through the international board. So they have to choose a nominee to work on the nominating committee. They also will, if there has not been a regional conference for the next triennium chosen, a bid or a host for the next regional conference, then they would discuss that and see if there's any affiliates who would like to put in a bid to host the upcoming regional congress, which would happen in the following year. The earliest time would be the following year after the General Assembly and Congress. And that just means that there's time for them to prepare for that. But it's also important for the handover meetings at the General Assembly. When the new president takes over, the regions can already be discussing the timelines for holding these regional conferences so that it could be put into the schedules. The president, of course, has to be at those regional conferences, and it really is up to her schedule. So if a region can be organized and already have the date and the place fixed by consensus in the region, then that makes it a lot easier to manage the schedules and move forward very quickly in the preparations for that. And then, of course, there's also just some business that gets done. There's regional finances, regional committees. There's a sub-regional coordinator that could be appointed by the incoming regional coordinator or the coordinator that's going to continue serve for a second term, because they are allowed to serve 2 terms. So that has to be addressed. So their finances, the regional finances are addressed. Sub-regional coordinators are addressed, chosen by consensus at the regional meetings. And lastly, if there's any urgent business that would be upcoming in the General Assembly that might be already identified, then that could be discussed. And so as a region, it becomes pretty much then a cohesive understanding of what would need to happen to make things run smoothly at the General Assembly. And then just one last thing is, in addition to the finances, the region has its own regulations. And if something's come up from the period when they had their regional conference to the General Assembly that needs to be addressed, then those regulations will need to be discussed as well. It's a great time because a lot of delegates from all of the affiliates in the region would be there. So it's a good opportunity to really get some business done and to get everybody informed about things that need to be addressed. I think that pretty much covers it on the regional meetings.
Thanks, Liz. So then, Yasmin, could you tell us about the purpose of the International Board pre-Congress meeting? You're on mute.
Thank you. The pre-International Board meeting, pre-Congress, currently is the time for us to, first of all, to approve the Congress agenda. It is supposed that you receive the agenda in advance, so you can review it and request some changes or additions to the agenda. So this is very important, and I find out that many delegates at the International Board didn't know that they have this right. And it's important that we review the agenda and we request, if we want, a modification on it. And for the international board is a different number of delegates. Is 2 delegates for each federation and 1 for a nation that have affiliate clubs. So it's different, and currently we are approving the procedure manual during that session, and is also the information for general information about the Congress announcements, and it is the main purpose of the International Board pre-Congress meeting. I don't know if Liz wants to add something to it.
I think, Yasmin, I think we also approved the proceedings of the previous Congress at that board meeting. No?
So
in the General Assembly?
The General Assembly.
In the General Assembly, okay. So, and then do we also approve the parliamentarians and those kind of officers?
Yes, sorry. We approve all the special task for the Congress. Parliamentarian, timekeeper, moderators, credentials, and one of the points to discuss during the regional meetings is to appoint the member who will conform the nomination committee, as Liz already says. So during this international board, each region present the member who will be part of this committee, also the elections committee. All these special committees are should be approved during the international board meeting.
Okay, thanks to both of you. So now we'll move on to our third question, which is what is the role of the delegate and also the alternate? And I might throw in something extra here, and that's the observer, which may be obvious, but we can mention. So Vicky, would you first respond to that?
Sorry. With the, particularly first talking about the delegates and the alternates, basically, depending on the voting rights of your affiliate, will determine how many you've got. But you've got to make sure that only that number on the floor of the General Assembly at any time. And their role is basically to speak on behalf of your affiliate and to vote. And so one of the key things is to be able to be succinct in what they say. They've got to be knowledgeable, but they've got to be able to put points within 2 minutes, because apart from moving a resolution, which is 3 minutes, everything else you've got 2 minutes to say it. So that would be one of the key things in determining whether a delegate is effective or not. I think the other thing is that they have to be very knowledgeable about understanding how Congress works. And this is where looking at the proceedings from previous years is really important. And I would say at the moment, I'm just so annoyed that the proceedings from Cairo are not on the website. So just starting to go through and understand and say, this is how it worked last time, and putting yourself into that position is part of the preparation. The other thing I think that a delegate or alternate does is they work as a team. And this is where the delegate leader has to understand the program each day. And usually, and I know from New Zealand because we're speaking to resolutions, or we might have someone with financial knowledge who we want to be there when the finances are, so it's working out who's going to be in what session when. And we set up this roster, and then depending on whether things change, we're changing who's the delegate on the floor at the time. I think too, part of it is understanding and doing that preparation, which Linda talked about before, of actually reading through the bios of all the nominations, understanding understanding the resolutions, etc. And as a team, knowing this is where we stand, and having a very good knowledge too of the rules of debate or standing orders, so that you're fitting in with the procedure. So there's quite a lot of preparation there, and this is where observers can really help with research, particularly if it's around an area, maybe a resolution that you want possibly to change, you want to put in an amendment or something, work out a friendly amendment with another federation who's proposing something, but you've got to know your facts. And that's where a sort of a team approach, and including research observers who might be very happy to do some research or go ask questions, find things out, is very useful.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. So I've also served as a delegate in Cairo 3 years ago, so I can speak also from some personal experience, as I'm sure everyone here could. One of the things that you mentioned was about speaking and speaking within 3 minutes. A lot of the delegates won't do that, of course. So what you're talking about there is if their club or federation has a motion on the floor that they would be perhaps presenting, that they would be speaking in that case. But obviously a lot of delegates are just there to vote, and they're not involved in the speaking process necessarily. I think one of the really key things that you said for me, and I'd like to just echo, is that the delegate is by definition representing their club or their federation. And sometimes it seems like they're deciding on the floor how to vote on their own, and it can never be that way. So they should come in, as you said before, knowing how their federation or club, their affiliate, wants them to vote on certain issues, but some may require listening to the way the motions are presented and so on. But they should be in dialogue with other delegates or with their affiliate separately, so that they are very clear that they're not voting as they choose, but they're voting on behalf of their affiliate. So I think that's a point of clarity that we really need to emphasize. The observers can be especially useful in helping them to determine how to vote, because they're in the room at the time. And if you also have a group chat, you can be, as you suggested, setting up beforehand, you could be having dialogue with the observers as well at the time. So you're limited to the number of delegates, and of course alternates are only there in place of delegates, same number, but you can have others in the observer rafters, so to speak, observing the whole process. The benefit of observer also, I think, is if someone thinks they might want to be a delegate in the future and they don't really understand the process, then it's very helpful to be sitting in on the entire GA from the observer's perspective. And you'll be infinitely better capable of being a delegate the next time around. So particularly our young members or people who are new to BPW who might want to be a delegate in future, I would strongly recommend that they get into the observers section and watch the whole General Assembly process. And one other thing I want to mention is it's all done on pretty strict parliamentary procedures. So if someone is not really familiar with that, that would be another part of preparation. And you mentioned that looking at prior proceedings could be very helpful. And of course, we have those for every Congress. So if the Cairo ones are not accessible, go to the Jeju ones, go to the Helsinki ones, go to several past proceedings, because all of them will give you the general format of the process of the General Assembly if you haven't been in one before. So let's go on to our fourth question now, which is what are the primary processes of the General Assembly? Leading us right into that. So if someone hasn't been to one before, what can they expect? And Yasmin, let's start with you on this. Mute.
I'm mute. The big event for BPW International is the General Assembly. Definitely is the place that the members can express themselves and to vote for whatever is presented there, which usually all the motions usually are to improve our organization. And this is that is why it's so important what Vicky says, that it is the time that the members arrive there well prepared, what to say, what we will discuss during this time, because it's the most important time for the organization. It's every 3 years. In the past, it was every 2 years. Then it was decided that, to move to 3 years. So is the only time that we have to learn. I agree that the observers need to be there. These members that says, oh, I am not a delegate, so let's go to have a tour. Or unfortunately, since some years ago, I think looking in retrospective, it's a mistake to put workshops at the same time of the General Assembly. The excuse to do this, it was exactly contrary of what we expect from the members. They said, no, it's better that the members that are not delegates have something to do. Well, something to do is be there as observers and find out how the things goes in this organization. And yes, there is a fight, and there is a very strong arguments and discussions, and that means how we work to protect our organization or to express our will in how we want to manage BPW. And I think that this is also the meaning of the learning of that we have to provide to our members, much better than a workshop, to be honest. So I will encourage all the members, if you are not a delegate or an alternate delegate, you are a member. You are the essence of this organization, as Lena Madison Phillips says. You are the essence, you are the body of this organization. You need to be involved, you need to understand what represents this General Assembly. So it's one of the most important things for me to, and I hope that this change in this next Congress. And if not, I think that we can ask for it. And during the General Assembly, well, we discussed the resolutions, the amendments to the Constitution, regulations, and we elect the new executive. It's in the past it was by ballot in a paper. Now it's a digivote, and we have to be prepared in advance to read all the documents of the candidates and arrive with a clear idea what we want for the future of BPW, who we think have the most the better skills for each position. And please don't arrive to the assembly just to see what the next will vote for, or who is more nice, because we really need to be conscious that for us the most important are the preparation of this member for this special position that they want to be elected. So take the time to read the CVs, to discuss with the members in your affiliate club or in your federation, and to make a decision. As I always said, a very good example is a university in Washington. Since many, many years ago, they select the teachers with the CV, without picture, without age, nothing, only the CV. So please, we are not selecting regions, we are not selecting colors, we are not selecting sympathies or my friend, we are selecting who will lead this organization.
Okay, and then I'd like to also ask Liz to speak on this question.
Thanks. So yes, as Yasmin said, this is the biggest event for our organization. And it does need to be taken very, very seriously. So, you know, I always tell everybody, if you really want to get the best view, you have to go to the top of the mountain. And our organization, you have to go to the top. You have to go to the Congress to really see how this organization works in action and what we do as members who own the organization. We own it. We need to take responsibility. We need to understand it. We need to steer it in a way that we think is good for the organization. We've been going almost 100 years. We want to go another 100 years. And so it's very important that our members really understand the responsibility of that. So in addition to what Yasmin has said, it's the one time that we get to, everybody collectively, first of all, gets to hear reports from the officers, from the executive. What have they done in the triennium? What has the president done in the triennium? What is the two vice presidents under their mandates, which is advocacy? The other one is membership. What did they accomplish? What did they do? The executive secretary, who is of course in charge of governance and all things legal and constitutional, gives her update on what has happened through the triennium. The executive finance officer has to give an update on the financial situation of the organization. Are we, still viable? And did we collect all the dues? Did all the members, did the membership from the VP membership, did we grow as an organization? And also, did we conclude and did we actually function under the budgets that were approved from the previous Congress? Because the Congress sets and approves the triennial budget. The executive then has to fulfill that those budgetary requirements. But of course, each year, the executive finance officer has to put together another budget based on the whatever the income is for the organization that year. You could start out in the beginning of a triennium having, 100,000 members, and 1 year in, you may be down to 75,000 members. So obviously, budgets have to be adjusted. So the executive finance officer has to make sure that she has done that, and that in any case, at the end of this triennial term, that it worked within the framework of what was approved by all of the International Board at the General Assembly on expenditures and income. And in addition, in the program and in the agenda, she will have to present the budget for the incoming triennium that the Congress and the General Assembly have to approve and vote on. So those are important reports. You get to hear from the immediate past president, what she's done in her term as immediate past president, because the immediate past president serves for 1 year on the executive and usually has a mandate of doing something that she was passionate about, or to continue something she was passionate about in that year, as well as being in a very important advisory role for the new executive for their upcoming term. So it's really critical to have that input. So she would give her report. And then we get down to the nitty-gritty business of the General Assembly, which is to approve and change, edit our governance documents. That means to amend things in our constitution, our regulations, which is, it's a fluid document usually. Things change in our world constantly. And so affiliates who presented amendments to those will of course have to work to present what they would like to change on those amendments. And at the Congress, it's set up so that the General Assembly set up so you have a microphone to speak for the amendment, you have a microphone to go and speak against the amendment. And the timekeepers really have a big job then to manage the timing on that. And of course, the parliamentarian has to make sure that everybody sticks to the rules. It's a great learning experience, and it's wonderful to see in action the discussion. And I think, as Yasmin said, for the members and the observers, this is such a great opportunity to listen to the discussion, because it's phenomenal to hear what's for and what's against. And you may have gone into an amendment being for it, and then having listened to all the discussion, have a complete change of heart that you may or may not approve of it anymore, depending on what's been going on. So it's very lively. It is fun, and it's very important, and it's very important business, because once we decide on those things and vote on them, that's it. You can't go back and change it anymore. So we do all these amendments, and then of course we work on resolutions, as Vicky has said, and Linda did last time in Cairo. Resolutions are internal resolutions that work inside the organization, and some external resolutions that affiliates would like to present on issues going around in the world that they would like the organization to support. And so those things get discussed and voted on as well. And then of course, lastly, the nominations and the elections. The elections is done at the very last day of Congress. And that's when we do elect our new executive and standing committee chairs, because they also have to be elected under our current constitution. So that's a big deal, and it's all done by DigiVote, and of course they immediately take over and begin the next triennium to serve the organization. And I'd like to step just a little bit back with Yasmin. What Yasmin said is to really understand, as Vicky has said too, when you go to this General Assembly, to understand the responsibility and the decisions that are going to be made there are very important and are long-lasting. They can't be overturned. So once you are going to elect somebody to lead the organization, make sure that you've done everything to actually credit that person, to verify them, to understand that they will be true leaders for this organization. It's not just about, as Yasmin says, how kind and how friendly they are, and how they may look like they can manage things, but can they really lead an international organization? Because it is the face that leads this organization, is the face of the president, along with the executive, and must be able to work with boards. We've had in the past times when people have come on an international executive with very little board experience, and that it just doesn't work so well. So it's important for us to do our due diligence and be very prudent about how we choose our upcoming leaders that will manage this organization for us between the General Assemblies. And of course, to realize that the organization belongs to the affiliates and the members. We actually own it. We need to take that charge of that ownership, and we need to guide it in a way that we want to see fit for the future. So it's a wonderfully collaborative experience. It's a wonderfully collaborative effort by everybody. And yes, there are some very difficult exchanges that happen on the General Assembly floor with lots of discussion for and against, and pro and against. But it's a great learning experience. And I think lastly, I'll just leave this with the last thought, is that the General Assembly and the Congress is the most wonderful experience to connect and bond with our international members from all over the world. And that is in itself really a fabulous experience, because we're bound by this sisterhood. We're bound by this organization that keeps us together. It's the glue that keeps us together. And it's a great opportunity exchanging cultures and different personalities and all the things that make this organization so special is the time that we get to really bond with each other and spend time and make real good friends. We all have friends, long-lasting friends that we've had ever since I've been a member. I've had friends in this organization from all the congresses that I've attended. So it becomes that platform where you can do that. And I also do agree with Yasmin in that in the past there was the way the Congress was set up is that the workshops and the General Assembly were held at the same time. And I don't think that that is a good thing. In Helsinki, when I was the international president, we changed that. And we broke it out to business sessions where everybody could attend together, everybody could listen, everybody could be completely informed. And then we would do workshops together where everybody could partake of what we would call very high level workshops and things that we put together for the membership that you would expect from a leading international organization. We expect to have an event that brings us the best of speakers, the best of knowledge within our partnering organizations like the United Nations, the International Trade Center, the Women's Empowerment Principles, all those advocacy things that we've worked on. We want to hear from those speakers. We want to hear how our organization has done the work that we do, that we take pride in. So all of that happens through the workshops. And then, of course, we party as well. We have great fun partying. The gala dinner is really wonderful where we dress up in all of our cultural clothes and get to really enjoy each other's company. I think that pretty much covers it from my perspective.
Okay, thanks to both of you. I think we cover General Assembly and a lot of other things there. So let's go on to our next question now, which is how do resolutions get presented? We've touched on this here and there, but we'll hear more specifically about that, starting with Vicky.
Oh, so I'm right in the middle of this at the moment. Basically, we ask all our voting members, so this is people, affiliates who have paid their dues, and also past presidents, standing committee chairs, have the option of putting resolutions in. And there's obviously a cut-off point, which was back in January this year. Those resolutions are then reviewed, looked at, and there's a process of working through them to make sure that they actually meet the BPW aims, that they're on target, whether they're internal ones or they're external. There's also looking at whether in fact they are properly framed, whether they are actually valid. So there's a lot of looking at it that goes on. And then what I see is really part of a mentoring or a learning process to going back to those who have put resolutions in and suggesting this would be stronger if you mentioned at the start some of the things that have already happened, or looking at the way of the wording and let's make it more succinct so your point comes across, all those things. So it's partly to make sure that when the resolutions come to Congress, they're in the workbook, that they're clear and that they're debatable. Because the resolutions chair is not looking at whether they're reasonable or not, really. That's what the General Assembly decides. Is it a clear, debatable motion? That's what we've got to make sure. I think too that one of the other things is from a federation who is putting resolutions up, and BPW New Zealand does a lot of that, is one of the things we try and do is look at our seconders, because you will never find us using probably the same federation. If we look back Cairo, when we did one on mental health in prisons, we asked BPW Thailand because we knew they were involved in projects there. When we did one on disability, we asked BPW Egypt because they were involved. So partly from a federation who's proposing motions, it's also a mentoring opportunity with resolutions to involve other federations who may not have done anything like that. And then because you present 3 minutes from the mover and 2 minutes from the seconder, you work together at your 5 minutes as a whole. And how you do that, that's important. And you also get your researchers involved thinking through what could be against this. So you're working out beforehand how to rebut it or how to also be open, because part of the process is that amendments may come in. Someone will say, our federation would support this motion if it included something else. And they may present something that you haven't thought about. And if you're in agreement, that is the other part of the resolution process, then on a basis of a friendly amendment, it can be agreed that it includes a wider perspective. Obviously, the other thing is that if you don't agree, this is where on the General Assembly floor, when the motion is put, amendments can be put there and debated. And I think too, for all affiliates to have a position on resolutions and to encourage people to go and join the for and against queue, because that is so important and it helps actually inform the debate, work out whether this is something that is actually for the good of the whole federation. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. And Linda, would you also speak to this for us?
Yes, thanks, Anne. Yeah, Vicky did such a great job. Thanks, Vicky. You hit all the points, I think. I would just add to that some of the things I discovered as the resolutions chair is that maybe others don't know. The resolutions chair is not an ongoing position. It's simply a position appointed for Congress. And so a period of time before Congress happens, someone is asked to serve as the resolutions chair. And so it's an appointment position. And then that chair will look to find a committee. And the committee really comes from all of the regions so that we have in that committee representation from the different regions. And then the resolutions, although received by the BPW International Office, are checked to see if, as Vicky had mentioned, that people have paid their dues, or affiliates and clubs have paid their dues, and that they are financially able to submit. And that was a surprise for me, because there were people submitting, there were clubs submitting that were not financial, and so we had to reject those resolutions and pass. And so that does happen. It's just something to consider. Again, looking at the mandate, whether the resolution is on mandate, the format, whether it's properly formatted. So 6 months before Congress, those resolutions are to be in, and then 2 months to work on them with the committee, sending them back and forth and getting them into shape so that they can be sent to the membership. So that takes a couple of months. And 4 months before Congress, those resolutions are sent out to the membership so they can review them with their clubs and again have an idea of how they want to vote. Again, what they do on the floor of Congress is so important with the pro mic and the con mic to be able to speak for and against. And as Vicky mentioned, the New Zealand BPW has such a great way of presenting them. I certainly learned a lot from that organization going forward, that they predetermine what they're going to say. and they have their seconders lined up ahead of time as well. So they're movers and seconders, and they actually give a little blurb to the seconder if they so choose to use it. That's like the gold standard to me. So they really are ensuring that their points are going to be made at the microphone, because as Vicky said, you only have the 5 minutes, 3 and 2 all together, and you want to make it count. And so it's the best of the way to process it if you can do it that way. So I would highly recommend that clubs really give a lot of thought into how they want their resolutions introduced. And then the pro and con discussion going back and forth, and questions as well. Sometimes there are questions. That's such an important time. It's such an exciting time because, as was mentioned before, sometimes you'll go to Congress with a preconceived idea of what you think or what your clubs have told you they feel about it. And then you'll hear things on the floor of Congress that maybe you hadn't thought of or hadn't been introduced before. And it's so important to hear that discussion and that debate, and to have the flexibility from your club. So some clubs come and they say, we've been told we have to vote this way, but they've heard something on the floor of Congress that has really changed the perspective. And I think that clubs really have to be flexible enough to say, we give our delegates the option to change if these issues have been addressed in some way. And so that's really the purpose, I think, of going and being able to be there. Otherwise, you could just submit your vote ahead of time. You know, to be there on the floor and listen to those debates is so important. And then, of course, once one side is no longer, there's no one at the microphone for the pro or the con, the question is called because there's no more debate. There's no more back and forth. So that's important to note as well, that if you want the debate to continue, you have to be up and at the microphone and ready to present your perspective. And of course, there are timelines on these things as well. So if you run past the timeline, then motion has to be made to extend if the debate and discussion is that important that you want it to continue. Someone will, and that has to have a mover and a seconder. All of these things are it's really important to have thought them out ahead of time and be ready to go at the time. Otherwise, it just delays the process, and that's difficult as well. The other thing to be aware of as a delegate is to have your bathroom breaks already done, or have your alternates right there, so that if you do have to slip out of the room, you can pass your digivote to your alternate and make sure that it's not affecting the vote. One of the things that happened in Cairo that was really difficult was that people were coming and going and leaving their digital votes on the table, and then either other people were grabbing it without authorization, without being the official alternate, or they simply were not voting at that time. And so I actually had to ask for the doors to be closed and for the votes to be stopped, and everybody to stay in the room. So that was certainly a controversial moment, and something I was not quite prepared for what happened next. So anyway, those are some of the things. It's exciting. It's a wonderful time to be there, and I recommend that when you go to Congress, that you make sure that you're part of that discussion.
Okay, thank you to both of you. So our final question now is going to be to all of the speakers, and it's such: are there any challenges that potential delegates should be aware of? So let's give them a heads up on something if we can. And I'd like to start with Yasmin on this question.
Thank you. I don't know if it's to answer your question, but it's something that I want to say is that the delegates and the affiliates be aware that they will receive the documents 4 months in advance, at least. According to the Constitution, is 4 months in advance. All the papers of the amendments for the regulations and constitution, all the resolutions. We will receive all the papers of the candidates for executive and for the standing committee chairs, the 9 standing committee chairs. And it is important that during these 4 months, we find the time to review it. If we have any doubt, we are allowed, maybe why not, to call one of the candidates and ask, which is really your work plan? Because the candidates are allowed to put 200 words in the statement, but maybe you want to know more. And mainly when you have 2, 3, 4 candidates for the same position. So to arrive with a better knowledge about each one, you can do it. Instead of, unfortunately, sometimes it's something that we have to be aware, because happen. For me, it's a very low level politics that someone called everybody to push for one candidate. So why we are not a kindergarten, we are a business and professional women, and we have to know why I'm voting for this person for this position, or why I want to go in favor of this resolution or regulation or amendment. Or so I think that we have to take this prerogative and rights that we have as members, how we want to deal with that in a very professional way. And I think the best is, as many of the federations used to do since many years ago, I think it's the time. It's a new time, it's a new century. After all this situation that we are living, I think will be a new world. So we really need to take seriously, and also for me it's an insult. I feel offended when someone called me to say, oh, I would like that you vote for this or vote for me, or really, it's a low level situation for me. So please take the time to read it. Please, if you have any doubt, even for someone that plays a resolution, you are able to ask to this person why, which is the intention. So for a better understanding, I think that will be very healthy for all of us, and for of course, for the future of BPW International.
Okay, thank you. So Liz, any challenges that potential delegates should be aware of?
Yes, so I think one challenge that always happens at the General Assembly is we run out of time. And that's critically important, because there's a lot of discussion that goes on. Sometimes a very simple topic could turn into a huge discussion and take up a tremendous amount of time. So as delegates and as members attending this, you need to be aware of that there's this amount of time scheduled, and anything could happen at any time to derail that schedule. And if you have important amendments or resolutions as a federation or as an affiliate that you want to make sure gets in, you best start paying attention to that clock and to the days, making sure that you get everything lined up, because the time that you're going to be given will suddenly be very rushed. And if you're not completely prepared, you may lose out on getting what you really want to accomplish out of your resolution or your amendment by that thing. So it's know that it's business. It's very important business. What is decided there is critical to moving forward. And so therefore, everybody should take that very seriously in the time that we spend on that General Assembly floor, and don't waste time, but use it very wisely. And again, also the challenges are, lobbying. Lots of members who come to the Congress are not that, well versed with how we work, and may want to lobby and get your ear and, try to get you to vote for a certain thing. Just know that, take it seriously. These decisions you have to look at for the organization for the long term. How do you think this is going to affect the organization moving forward? We want to be there for another 100 years. So that means we have to take everything very seriously. And so consider everything carefully. That's all the advice I could give anybody going. And then, of course, when you have time between the business sessions, you could get some more information. If you need, go out there and look for information. If you want to have more information on what is coming up that is critically important, go get it. Go listen to some people. Seek out some mentors. Seek out people who've been in the organization a while that you respect, and go find out from them the information that you need. So those are the challenges that would come up.
Okay, thank you. All right, Linda. Challenges to potential delegates.
Okay, I think those were great points, and I have to echo them as well to say that time is a big issue. Networking is something that we all do at our local clubs, and we have to carry that forward into the Congress as well, in the sense that we are connecting with others, talking business, talking about the issues that are coming up in the future, and making sure that we're hearing anything that's going to, make a roadblock or a stumbling block for our things that we're trying to advance, and being able to address those outside of the business meetings, at the social events, at all of the fun things that we're doing. And yeah, it should be fun, and yet it will be fun for sure, but still keep that eye on the prize of we want to get X or Y accomplished, and how do we do it, and let's talk about it offline before it comes to the floor, so that it's a smooth transition once it does come to the floor. And the second big challenge, I think, is this is international. We find people that don't speak our language and don't do things the way we do things. And so when you find people from other continents, other parts of the world, there's a difference. There definitely is a difference in how, say, the European people may do things differently than people from Africa and North America. And so being aware of those cultural differences, those ways of getting the business done, it's important to recognize that there is going to be that difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Vicky, would you also speak to challenges?
Okay, well, I'm going to speak first just about a little thing, but actually I found it quite disconcerting, because this is when I first spoke at my first Congress, and you're having translator. And I said something I thought was like a bit funny, and I was looking for the laughter. It wasn't happening. I kept on with something serious, and 30 seconds later I got laughter in the middle of something serious, and I got, oh. And then you had to realize this was the translation delay. So I think that's one of the challenges for speakers too, to understand that watching your audience face is not actually always going to help you, because of the translation issues, that you don't get the immediate feedback of whether they're with you or not. The other thing, and I echo what everyone else has said about the importance of thinking ahead, what's best for our whole organisation, keeping that in mind and being open. And it's very easy to know the other federations that think similarly to you and spend time with them. And so you end up in the same circles saying the same things. And Congress is an opportunity to open out, hear from others and weigh it up. And this is where having your federation team connected, whether it's with a weekly or a daily breakfast meeting and being on WhatsApp, so that if you think, oh, actually we should be revising our position on something, everyone in the team knows and you can discuss it and be open. I also don't want to just quite leave it on a challenge, because the other thing that comes out of Congress is enormous opportunities. I know for BPW New Zealand, because alphabetically we sit by Nigeria. And when in Jeju we were talking about child marriages, we both put up resolutions, but then we were able out of that to put together a brief for CSW the following year, and we actually kept that going for 2 or 3 years, working in conjunction. So, and again with BPW Japan, because New Zealand had had a disaster, and then with our earthquake, and then we were speaking to Japan with theirs in Jeju, we seconded their resolution. And so the opportunities for actually working together and advancing a cause for women is really, all those opportunities come up. So it's grab them and make the most of them. And it's also for your own federation, make the most of the fire that gets lit in the bellies of everyone who goes. That it's such an energizing event that when you come back, you will find that a lot of your team members, if you ask them, will you be president of this club? Will you stand up and speak in front of a government select committee about this topic? They're much more likely to say yes. It's a whole growth thing in their capabilities and in your federation because they've been put in a bit of a cauldron. They've stretched their own capabilities. They've also come to understand what a great organisation this is and its potential for influencing how women and our rights and in our world, how much we can influence. And then if we do it right, we come back and we can really make a difference in our own federations, pick up on so much we've learned. So yes, there are challenges, but I'd say there's bigger opportunities if we make the most of it.
Okay, thank you. I want to just pick up on what Linda said about culture when we have people coming from more than 50 countries from all around the world. And we're going to have people who have deep respect for hierarchy and people who come from very egalitarian societies, and each will seem rude or stuffy to the other. And we have people who all talk at once versus people who take turns talking, and each will think the other is a little bit rude or strange. And that happens in the General Assembly a lot of times too. And we can have huge differences in the idea of time, as we all know. Some cultures are quite relaxed about time, and some are quite uptight about time. And so that can be a source of tension sometimes. So a lot of interesting cultural differences that can sometimes be crossing points. Locked doors. The locked doors of GA are quite serious. So if you're on the wrong side of the door, whether on the inside or the outside, and that's not where you belong, and it's the time to lock the doors, be aware that those doors will be locked. And there will be guards at all of those doors. And we've had people shut out when they should have been in, and vice versa. So that is something that's taken quite seriously. And I would say be prepared for lack of sleep. We have very long General Assemblies that start early in the morning until late in the afternoon, or even bordering on early evening. Then we have events, we have after parties, and all sorts of informal meetings that are happening in all the nooks and crannies around all of that. So sleep is inconsequential. Just be prepared for that. So this brings us to the close, and by way of closing remarks, I want to give a huge thanks to all of our panelists here. Once again, we have Dr. Yasmin Darwich, who is our immediate past international president. We have Elizabeth Benham, who is a past international president a couple of terms ago. We have Vicky, who is a past president of BPW New Zealand Federation and our current resolutions chair. And we have Linda Davis, who is a present Federation president of BPW Canada and the past resolutions chair. You two mirror each other just a bit. And the other two of you mirror each other just a bit. So thank you so much to all of you for lending your expertise to help our membership prepare for Congress. We want to thank our viewers. We hope a number of our members view this video and pass it along to their sisterhood. And we hope that this is helpful for you and that we see you at Congress. Thanks to one and all, and see you in another webinar soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.